Joining me now is filmmaker and journalist Ami Horowitz. Ami, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the highlights of the presidential debate, including Trump's claim that migrants are eating cats and dogs.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
And then he nailed Kamala Harris, the border czar, challenging her on live TV to go to the White House, wake Joe Biden up and sign a bill to close the border down now.
Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time, sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill.
Kamala Harris has no legs to stand on when it comes to her border failures. Did Trump show her up today? What's your take?
Yeah, I think that if I had a scorecard, I would say she had a slight edge overall on this, but it was pretty close. The problem is that she needed a knockout blow because the polls are trending against her now that the sugar high of her replacing Biden is over and after the DNC. And she did not score that knockout punch. Look, if you look at the New York Times poll that came out, this is very, very bad news for her campaign. It has her up 1 among likely voters, 2 among all voters. And as we all know, polls seem to sample Trump voters. But if you look at the crosstabs, they're even worse for her. This is an election of change. A majority of people want change. And actually, a clear majority view Trump as the agent of change more than Kamala Harris. And when they talked to the voters and said, hey, who do you think will do better on the particular issue that you care about the most, without exemplifying or specifying a particular issue? Again, Trump wins a clear majority over Kamala Harris. And he's up 16% on her on the economy, which is the number 1 issue across voters. So she really needed a knockout blow. She didn't get it. Look, this is a typical Trump debate. He's the same debate he had before. It was kind of rambling, a little unfocused, but there's so much ammunition against Biden and Harris that some of the stuff that he was shooting the Gatling gun ended up hitting and sticking. The difference this time was that he didn't have an opponent who came on stage, poured gasoline over himself, and lit himself on fire. She didn't do that. In fact, he kind of put himself a little bit of a disadvantage by continuously talking about how dumb she is, how terrible she is. So people are expecting that. Usually you try to pump up the person you're about to debate. He didn't do that, did the opposite, and did not serve him well. And in the first 5 minutes, he had a chance for a real clean body blow. When she was asked, are Americans better off now than they were 4 years ago? She did not answer the question. And when it came back to Trump, he should have pointed out she didn't answer the question, because the answer is obviously no. He took a swing and a miss on that. I thought it was a huge opportunity missed. But again, he was also debating the moderators who simply were clearly on her side. The biggest issue was they kept fact-checking him in real time, but never fact-check hers when she clearly exaggerated or outright lied. And I think that was a problem that all Republicans have when it comes to debates, and this particular one as well.
I want to talk more about that, because it felt as though the moderators spent an enormous amount of time, as you said, fact-checking Donald Trump, but not doing the same with Kamala Harris. Have a look at this.
You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of President Trump. As you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin?
How biased, Ami, was this debate by ABC News in your view? It felt to me as though it was very much so 3 against 1.
Yeah, it was not great. Look, it wasn't the most egregious of all the people I've seen moderate debates, but it wasn't good. And I think the single biggest issue, in my view, was the fact that they were fact-checking him. And by the way, rightly so. I'm not saying that the moderators should not fact-check. I think they should. I don't like it when either side exaggerates or says lies. Both sides did it. There were a number of times where I'm screaming at the screen saying, guys, this is so obviously wrong. And by the way, one of the biggest ones is the fact that she kept saying, Trump abortion ban, Trump abortion ban. There is no Trump abortion ban. Or the worst of all for me is Charlottesville. That's one of the biggest lies of all time, that she continued this lie of he was referring to the neo-Nazis as good people on both sides. And I can go on and on and on. And I think that was the worst of it.
But I've got to say as well, ABC changed its tune midway through, allowing Kamala to also interrupt Trump. So it left him to roll out this comment.
She was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Now, of course, that was a reference to when she debated Mike Pence in the VP debate. And she said, I am speaking, when he interrupted her.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Yes.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation. Okay?
Please.
Okay.
Yes. Kamala Harris, I'm a victim. Hear me. I'm a woman. Hear me roar. I'm a victim. Look, I didn't like it when she did it. It doesn't come across as good. And I think when Trump did it also doesn't come across as good. I think either one should just kind of let it go. It was odd that her mic was on, but yeah, I don't think it helps anybody when they kind of play that role saying, oh, please let me speak, let me speak. I think it doesn't play well on TV.
Yeah, look, fair enough. And there was also a funny moment where Donald Trump said this, because as we know, Kamala has been copying some of his policies or ways of doing things.
Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country.
I thought that was hilarious. I'd like to see Kamala in a MAGA hat. But we know that she's really struggled to articulate her own policies or lack thereof. Did she explain her policies at all better in this debate?
No, not at all. I watched the debate twice, which, by the way, I recommend nobody do. And the second time through, first time was live, second time I was going through it, and I was looking for where the policies might be. Didn't see them. Look, I mean, she did actually populate her website with a few paragraphs of policy, but as was actually kind of proven, she just literally cut and paste Biden's policies onto her policy page. So I guess if you really want to know her policies, you just have to look at the last 4 years of the Biden-Harris presidency, and I think you'll get a sense of what her policies are. But I think, look, the truth is actually she will be more radical. One thing Trump said that was right was, yes, she did change her tune on fracking, but she never said, when she said I changed it in 2020, what she was referring to is she was essentially vocalizing the policy of her boss, the eventual president, Joe Biden. She never said, I believe this. She kept referring to what Joe Biden wanted to do, and in fact, he did do. And I think Trump was right when he said if she becomes president in Pennsylvania, this debate was happening, she will attempt to ban fracking day one. I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah, she was yo-yoing on that one, and you're right, she likes to copy and paste things too. Now, Donald Trump asked a key question that really has been on everyone's mind: where on earth is the president?
We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president?
Ami, there were reports this week that Joe Biden has been on holiday for 40% of his presidency, and Trump really did ask a legitimate question there. Where on earth is the president?
I don't know. Depends where Dr. Joe Biden is. Where Dr. Joe Biden is, that's where the president is. Look, it's so interesting that they kept talking about how they had to replace him as president, as the nominee, because he clearly wasn't competent to be the nominee. The next question needs to be, was he competent to be president? Because if you can't run, I'm not sure you can actually, it's actually more taxing and more difficult and frankly more important to run the country than to run for the guy running the country. So I think that brings up more questions than it answers when you replace him as the nominee. And I don't think he answers them when he's falling asleep on the beach in Delaware.
No, clearly not. He is clocked off in Delaware and not running America. Look, let's move on, Ami, because I want to get your response to this. CNN anchor Erin Burnett appears to have marvelled at some of the far-left policy positions that Kamala Harris had when she was a presidential candidate back in 2019, including taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained illegal migrants. Have a listen.
Take immigration and look at what she said here. She said on immigration, she made this open-ended pledge to end immigrant detention. She said she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She also said she supported
taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants.
She
actually said she supported that.
She both wrote and answered in the affirmative when she was asked this. Oh. And she said she also supported it for federal prisoners. Now, she also pledged to slash immigration detention by 50%, close all family and private facilities, and decrease funding for ICE, and then the end ICE detainers with local law enforcement.
I mean, these are things that, you know, it would be hard to think that you would come up with taxpayer funding gender transitions for detained migrants, and yet this, as you say, written and verbally.
Ami, it sounds like this CNN host is surprised by the evidence that's right in front of her.
Oh, that was so delicious to watch. I got to say. Look, Andrew Kaczynski is actually a pretty good reporter, and I think he does hold people to account on both sides. So I'm glad they had him on to talk about this issue. I think it highlights a couple points. First of all, that CNN and the mainstream media is so used to carrying the Democrats' water that they're confronted with a data point from their own people, they are genuinely shocked. I think they really do believe their BS. And I think what's interesting is it does highlight. And by the way, you know, later on in that interview, they talked about they held her to account that she was that Kamala Harris was taking photos and videos of her in front of the wall that Donald Trump built. I think that was interesting as well. That was a little bit shocking. But it highlights the point, which is look, outside of the economy and inflation, immigration is their biggest vulnerability. And that's where we have to continue on hitting her. Now, Trump did that in this debate to a large extent, but it does not serve him well and does not serve the purpose of the Republicans being elected by continuing to talk about things like the clip you showed before about the Haitians eating pets, right? It makes you look weird. It does make that does make you look weird, right? And it does make it has been, look, whether it's debunked or not, I'm not sure. A number of people have debunked it. I just don't know. But it doesn't serve you well for that to be your immigration talking point. It just doesn't. There's so many more clear, true, direct ways to hit her on immigration. You don't have to use that. It doesn't serve you well. It doesn't make you look good among regular people who don't know anything about this stuff. I think they need to focus on the issues that she is most vulnerable on, that clearly she is losing on immigration.
Yeah, absolutely. She certainly is. Now, look, Melania Trump has spoken publicly for the very first time about the assassination attempt on her husband, questioning officials' accounts of the incident. This is the video she posted.
The attempt to end my husband's life was a horrible, distressing experience. Now, the silence around it feels heavy. I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter before the speech? There is definitely more to this story, and we need to uncover the truth.
I mean, what do you make of the statement she's made here?
First of all, I think it's so interesting. One of the most monumental moments in election history was an assassination attempt to get a candidate live on television Yet we've pretty much forgotten all about it. Like I remember in the moment, it was like, this is it. This Trump, in that moment, with his hand in the air. I know I was sitting around saying, oh God, the election's wrapped up. But we've really, for the most part, it's not been an issue, kind of forgot all about it, which I think is fascinating. Look, I think her pointers are interesting. I don't think there's any conspiracy around here. I don't like the idea of a conspiracy around it. I don't think that's true. I think incompetency really was the major issue there. Do you remember when they were saying, well, why didn't they go on the roof and check out the roof? It was a slanted roof. They couldn't go on a roof because it was too dangerous, because it was a slight little slant to the roof. I think that the bigger focus is on incompetence as opposed to some kind of conspiracy theory.
Yeah, look, that's certainly the way they're trying to paint it for sure. Now, look, white fragility author Robin DiAngelo has been tricked into paying reparations to a black producer in podcaster Matt Walsh's upcoming documentary, Am I Racist? This is according to the New York Post, which says that an undercover, man-bun-wearing Walsh goaded DiAngelo into ponying up cash to his producer Ben to compensate for the sins of the past by first coughing up the money himself. Ami, what do you make of this?
Look, I love that kind of thing. That's it's part of what I do as well. So I think when they're able to embarrass a race huckster like her, Robin DiAngelo, I'm all for it. Robin DiAngelo has made millions of dollars race baiting and creating racial division in our country. She gets significant speaking fees. She does them all the time. And by the way, yeah, she also is, look, she's one of the more negative forces in our country. And also, during her PhD thesis, she's actually, ironically, been accused of plagiarizing a minority scholar. So, yeah, I find it all fascinating. Happy to see it.
Yeah, it is very fascinating. Ami Horowitz, great to be with you. Thank you very much for joining us on the show this evening.